Hi everybody, Chris here from Truly Holistic. I thought I would jump on and do an updates video for June 2025. Talking about a few things that have been coming up in sessions regularly and quite consistently, right? To keep you up to date with what the sessions entail and what's been coming up lately. One thing that's been coming up a lot is a clearing regarding euphoria. And on my YouTube channel, we've done some free healings in relevance to euphoria. And it's becoming more prevalent, that clearing, that we need to do that in-session work. And like anything that keeps popping up, there's a purpose behind that, right? And that's something about life. Life is about experience. Life is about gaining the lesson from the experience, right? Which is the word karma. And funnily enough, we're going to talk about karma in a bit more in a minute. But and to connect into that experience, right? To get to the heart of the matter, right? We need to be in the heart to see the lesson, right, out of every experience, and then to learn that and convert that experience into wisdom. Been very important. So, we take note of certain things that come up regularly, and definitely this clearing to provide euphoria is coming up a lot. Again, it's this purpose to it. And so what we've found with euphoria is it's a heightened sense of feel. Okay. Why this is important? Because the constant that connects us to our experience, to life itself, you could say the fabric of reality, is what is felt. For example, feel doesn't arrive. It is directly there. It's a constant. For example, when we're experiencing something, we know immediately something about it, right? We'll say that's our gut instinct, right? Something that we feel. It's there. It doesn't need time because it's directly connected to our experience. While thought arrives, which means it's not the constant, it's not directly connected to our experience. It's something that intervenes. And why this is so important, because the work at Truly Holistic is that we've talked about that we came here as the soul first. Because that's what we infinitely authentically are. And the soul has nothing to do with the mind. But we were led astray, and we, as chronologically over a lifetime, we tend to get moved and shifted further and further away from our original purpose in being here as the soul. And we know why that is because the mind intervenes through mind, thought, mentality to form a curriculum into becoming something we're not, which is a human identity, because that's what it is. It's an identity. And of course, the curriculum in becoming the human, and this is the realization that gets dawned upon us, that of what society needs us to be, what our collective needs us to become. Not what we authentically are, but what humanity requires of us, per se. So it's this whole aspect that, again, in every experience, if we allow doubt to creep in based on what we feel, right? Our gut instinct, what we feel from the heart, then we allow the mind and its thoughts and mentalities then to come in, to intervene, right? So we're taught and conditioned to then, in that first 7 years of life, right? You hear people like Bruce Lipton and people, gurus in that field, talking about how important those first 7 years of life are. And why that's so important is because that is that curriculum in becoming the human, right? And that we will hold on to that conditioning, right? That's taught us to see this as normal and hence see that as abnormal, to compartmentalize into things into, which is duality, right? Two polarities, good and bad, which is really removing us further and further away from our experience and the lesson of the experience, which is the whole reason why we're here, right? We're not connected to what is anymore. We're moving towards what isn't, right? Through compartmentalization, which is using mentality, which is what the mind does. The heart doesn't use mentality because that's what you authentically are. From the heart is the soul, right? So coming back to euphoria and how that connects there is that we are conditioned to use mind thought mentality as a primary form of discernment, right? Of discerning, perceiving, and then reacting or responding to our life, our experience of reality. And so hence thought is always superseding feel, right? Because as I say, it feels the constant. Our experience through this medium, this conduit, this interface we refer to as a body, is what is felt. It's what is felt. So really, the core aspect of our experience of a life is based on feel. But because we are conditioned as this thing we identify in ourselves, we embody ourselves as the human, we decide to try and understand what is felt through thought. And of course, that doesn't work. So when we provide euphoria to someone, right, the clearing of euphoria, finally, we're allowing feel to now supersede thought. Okay, that's why that's coming up a lot. So we've done a lot of posts like on social media talking about, a prime example of that. And I'm not saying to go and do this. This is just giving you an example. Is cold plunging, right? So when someone is all over the place, right? Because this is what happens when we're thinking and overthinking, right? Is we create all these tangents, right? These ifs, these maybes, possiblies, and all of a sudden we're overwhelmed, we're confused, we're conflicted, we're stressed, right? We're living through the nervous system instead of from the heart, which then means we're vulnerable to our circumstance, situation. We embody everything that we're not instead of facilitating everything we are, right? We could take someone like that, right? And then you throw them into a body of cold water, ice cold water, whether it's you're jumping into a lake or into a river, or cold plunging, which is a big thing at the moment, big trend. And all of a sudden, all that goes away. Why? Because it's the incredible sense of feel of that icy cold water that dominates. All of a sudden, all that chatter and that thoughts and all those ifs, maybes, and like just go away. And that's an example of feel superseding thought. And why do people then keep doing it? Because they feel more connected to themselves. They have clarity, right? They feel alive. And that's another thing that we're connecting to this word euphoria, to feel alive. The whole reason to be here is to feel alive. And I'm going to emphasize the word feel, because that's what we are. Okay. So that's been coming up a lot. I've been loving it, providing that. And also what I want to connect to feel as well as truly holistic way of providing everything we provide. Whether it's the healing session work, the reality coaching, the self-empowered healing systems that we give you to become the healer, the products that we make, whether it's through Tensor technology, light technology, they're all heart-based, which of course the domain of the heart's feel, it's not thought, which is facilitating more of you, which is a consciousness. And we're really trying to differentiate the difference between intelligence and consciousness. Because, for example, AI, right, it's a really big deal at the moment, humanity. And it's an intelligence, right? And we can define intelligence through thought, because that's how the human sees intelligence, right? It's dependent on how you think, right? Science is a mind-orientated pathway for humanity that's based on thought, not feel. Okay. Right. And this is the interesting thing connected to human and the AI. A lot of people perceive AI as this technology that is advancing humanity, when really, if it was technology, it'd be called artificial technology, but it's not. It's called artificial intelligence, right? It's a difference, okay? But humanity's been primed for this for a very long time, and I'll tell you why. When a human, right, and as I say, the primary form of discernment we get taught as the human, right, through that curriculum and becoming a human, especially those first few years of life, that you'll then use that conditioning for the rest of your life, is to use mentality. And what does mentality do? It uses probability, right? Because mentality continually allows your past to influence the choices you make now, and the choices you make now becomes your perceived future, which means you're in a remanifestating loop. You're stuck in a loop. And we're going to connect this also to when we get to karma and karmic wheel in particular in a minute. Now, so we're basing what we're perceiving now by comparing it to something in the past, which then we are using probability. Now, how does that connect to AI? AI is based on algorithms, and what's that based on? Is that based on all possibility? No, probability. Probabilities. So really the way the human curriculum from the mind is really the same as artificial intelligence, right? So what comes through the mind is where artificial intelligence originates from. Because this is the thing. When a human, and we know this, working on thousands of clients through the years, right? We know that when somebody is mind-orientated, right? They're thinking, they're overthinking, they're using mentality. They are not facilitating the natural state, which means they are not presenting a state that then supports their wellness and vitality. It actually promotes degeneration of the body. It promotes illness of the body. Okay, so you could say that's not your natural intelligence. It's an artificial intelligence. It always was. Your natural state is to get the heart open, right? This is what we do within 45 minutes in a session. And people all of a sudden, at the start feeling conflicted, lack of clarity, pain, unease with who they are. 45 minutes later, by just simply getting them out of here and getting them to the heart, because I'm not sending you my energy, I'm connecting you with more of what you actually are, authentically are. We get them back in the heart. All of a sudden, they have a smile on their face. They're happy. They feel more connected to themselves. They have clarity. The pain goes away. Problems go away. It's clear as anything. Okay. So this aspect that, because when we're in the heart, we invest in all infinite possibility. And what infinite possibility means? Change. And what is every client coming to me for a session for? What do they need? What do they need? What do they want? They want change. Okay. Not more probability, but possibility to enable what the now represents, which is a 0 point, to create something that is new, right? Which allows them to evolve as a consciousness. That's the whole reason why they're here. But it's the same path in facilitating a state that supports rejuvenation, healing, and regeneration. Okay. So a lot of AI stuff's been coming through as well. We're another clearing we're doing in sessions is to remove AI qubits, right? Now you got to understand in tensor technology, right? When we make a tensor ring, that wire is bent back on itself, put it through a drill, which twists it, right? Now that twisting removes the dual component of dark and light, right? So that ring then becomes an anchor just simply for light, because that's what you want. You're not light and dark. Dark is the void. That's what comes through the mind. Light is the quantum, which comes through the heart. That's where you come from. That's what you are. Okay. Now, so we've differentiated qubit, CUBIT, with QUBIT to differentiate the difference between energetics that come from the void through the mind or come from the quantum through the heart, right? So when we say a qubit, right, because that's what we, once that wise twist, we cut it to a specific measurement and then we braze that point. That's what that tensor ring or tensor prop becomes an anchor to bring those energetics through, because that's what it means. Now, as the human, we perceive that as genetics, okay, and gene expression, right? So when I'm finding AI qubits, right, which again is facilitated through the mind from the void, right, because that's where all parasitic intelligence comes from, including cancer, okay, because void means nothing, nothingness, right? It doesn't have its own sustenance or light to evolve itself. It must feed on something that is the light, and that's where we come into it, right? So when we remove AI qubits, we're removing energetics, right, genetics, and gene expression that doesn't support that physiology, that individual's physiology. Okay, so we're working on at that level, working on DNA, we're working on genetics, and we're working on gene expression. So this is a very big one as well, and we see that. And of course, the tensor products that we make is all about facilitating, providing more of your energetics, which means more of your DNA that is dormant, or what they perceive as junk DNA, which is just ridiculous how they can call it that, is to unlock it, which is unlocking more of your infinite potential. That's what the tensor and the light technology products provide to you, because they're unlocking more of you. They're not giving you something that's outside of you. They're not giving something that I have to you. They're facilitating more of you, because yes, you need energy, but you need your own energy signature. Okay, because when you get into trouble, when your body's overwhelmed, stressed, right, you're living through the nervous system, that's because you're embodying energy, but it's not your energy signature. Okay, you need your energy signature, and that's why I said in my client, you're either facilitating more of what you are, or you're embodying more of what you're not. Okay, very important. Now, let's get into a really, really new clearing that came in only a couple of days ago. And as we lead into it, with this particular client, it asked me to imprint the ether element onto their nervous system, right, which is a very expansive element, right? And I'm just going to show you this. Just make sure I get this right. Let's get that one there. I think it's that one. No, it's not. Okay, let's just keep this on. Okay. There we go. This is my ascension map, right? And as you can see, we've got the earth, the green, and the earth element, the air element, and the white, right? Which is part of all the branches, the trunk of the tree and the branches. This map is, is a depiction of your consciousness, of all that you are, right? It's depicted as a tree, right? So much symbology with the tree, right? Including, our lungs are upside down trees, right? And it's got a symbiotic relationship with the trees outside of us, right? Because we take in oxygen, breathe out carbon dioxide, they take carbon dioxide and breathe out oxygen. So there's a symbiotic relationship we have. And also, the word airway, right? To show you the way, because when we're connecting to this air element, as you can see up here, we are connecting into more of our wisdom, more of our higher self as a guide, right? To show us the way. Anyway, earth element, air element, then you got down here in the roots, water element, and then you got, the soil, fire, and ether. Now, there was a time where that tree wasn't there, right? And that's consciousness. That's you as a soul consciousness. And of course, the soul, there's celestial existence, right? That extended itself through this dynamic as a tree, right? To expand itself. And the reason why it did that and why we're here is the void element, right? The void, which is the dark, right? Which is what the mind represents. needed to be balanced out, right? It was overtaking everything, right? As I say, that's why I say we're the light, okay? But the mind, and part of becoming, as I said before, right, the human curriculum is it doesn't have a power of its own, hence it's parasitic in nature. Its power comes through manipulating you to believing that you are the mind and embodying it as your own, right? This is where the whole idea of people saying, oh, we're both the light and the dark. Well, show me how the darkness supports you and presents your natural state. We've been doing this, working with clients for years, working on thousands of clients, and it's clear to see that we're not the dark, we are the light. Okay, so you can see that ether is the most expansive element because that's where everything begins, right? The deepest element of the soil depicted on this map. Okay, and we actually create a tensor ring set, right, with all the elements. So you get a tensor ring that's the earth, which is the activation qubit, the air element, which is the gateway qubit, water, ascension qubit, fire is the fire infinity qubit, and then eternity qubit is what ether is. So you can apply this yourself at home, but as you can see in the little key here, earth means ground, right? So these are things that we need to learn to facilitate our natural state, which is to get our heart open, to allow our heart to lead us through feel, and to maintain that. We must learn these skill sets. And one of them is to ground ourselves, right, which is always associated with earth, right? There's a lot of science now, about the benefits of going barefoot on the earth, right, and how that changes our physiology. But the way I see our natural, we can even ground and earth ourselves by not even touching the earth, and how I know that is by getting the heart open. Again, as I mentioned, there's a symbiotic relationship between the lungs, right, and the way we breathe, right? A lot of people are into breath work and how that connects with the trees that we perceive outside of ourselves. Well, it's the same thing with the heart and the earth, right? We have a symbiotic relationship with the earth. The earth's natural state is what we call nature, right? And we tend to connect into more of that when we are more in our natural state, which is to get our heart open. And finally, right, in the English language, every letter that makes up the word earth makes up the same word heart, right? It's all the same. So we must learn to ground ourselves, which is to remain in our heart, right? When we shift into the head and go into mind thought mentality, we lose our ground. We lose our center of balance, right? Now, the next one is air, right, which teaches us self-awareness, right? So I mentioned about breath work, right, and how that connects with air, right, and the airway. Well, when you bring your awareness back to you, because your reality is what's in front of your nose, not what the media or the news are telling you to know about on the other side of the world, where you can't make a change. No, you make a change here, and then that changes accordingly. That's what reality is based on, right? So you want to be self-aware of your own choices, because those choices then become your reality, the reality you're forging. Okay, so that's another aspect that needs to be understood. Now, the water element teaches us flow, right? To be in the flow, go with the flow, which is really to feel our way. Because when we think our way, we get too far ahead of ourselves. We start to connect to comparing to the past. We're in a state of uncertainty there, when really, when we're in the flow, going with the flow, where we're just feeling our way, which means we can only be connected to simply what is the present moment, we enable ourselves a state of certainty. So out of that certainty, we created a love, because we only created a fear when we are in a state of uncertainty, and that's what the mind then presents. And then fire is to renew, right? To completely transform, right? To break the attachments, the cords, the dependencies, right? To become more self-sufficient. And then the last one, ether, is really the result of getting all the other things right, all the other elements right? We start from earth, air, water, fire. And then what does that result? New beginnings, which really essentially means ascension. Ascension is about facilitating everything that you are to be present and represented here. That's what ascension is. Okay. most of the ideas and concepts of what people believe ascension is all based from the mind. But we're not the mind. And the mind doesn't want you to ascend because it wants you to keep coming back for more, right? Which we call reincarnation. It's a loop, a remanifestating loop. Okay. So in that session, we imprinted ether, right, onto their nervous system, right? And so that was very much based on ascension, right, as I've just talked about and discussed. We also facilitated euphoria. Now, this is the new clearing that really came up. Oh, and I use my letter chart majority of the time, right? Conversation chart and session work. My dowsing's super fast. Everyone always comments about how super fast it is because there's no interference. Because when you're directly connected into your own light, your own consciousness, the soul, you are powerful. Nothing can get in your way. The only way entities can get in the way is by you jumping back into the head, back into mind, thought, mentality. Because what does that do? It closes off your power that comes through the heart, and then all of a sudden you can be manipulated and controlled from that. Because where does control come from? It's not something controlling your mind. The mind is the controlling mechanism, always has been. Okay, anyway, when I was on that letter chart, the letters O, F, A, N came out. And I was like, what's this O-fan? I don't know what O-fan. And we've had this happen many times over the years where a word comes up that I don't know. And a lot of times it's not an English word. So this is where Google comes into play. So then I type in O-fan. And O-fan is a Hebrew word which means cycle or a cycle that's ever moving. Well, straight away I was like, here we go. Cycle that's ever moving. Why I found that interesting was because a lot of times when we're working with a cycle or a loop, we're talking about mentality, and that's a cycle or loop that gets you stuck. Now, but this is a cycle that's ever moving, right? It's not stuck, it's moving forward, which is to evolve, which is to ascend. So I was like, okay, this is interesting. Let's see where we go with this. And as we were looking into do the clearing, what my soul consciousness came in and presented to me, it said that this O-fan, this ever a moving cycle, it can be perceived as what you might know as the karmic wheel. Okay. So how it wanted me to provide the karmic wheel was to this client's human identity. Right? Because at Truly Holistic, we see the human as an identity. It's not what you infinitely and authentically are. Right? We are here. Our purpose in being here is based on what we infinitely and authentically are. Right? Well, we get so swept up with all the curriculum and the conditioning and becoming this identity known as a human that all of a sudden our focus becomes what humanity wants and what humanity needs. Okay. But that's part of the loop. That's part of playing the game of duality, being controlled, right? So I found this really interesting, right? Because quite a lot of the times that human identity with all the conditioning it holds is what not allows us to move, to gain traction, right? For example, someone's come to me wanting to remedy their health problem. And a lot of people that come to me have been to so many other people that have tried so many things. And they're essentially saying to me, hey, Chris, I've tried this, I've tried that, I've tried that. And immediately I know what they haven't tried, which is to change how they perceive reality, which is not based on bringing something outside of them in. It's about them. And I see this all the time. Why? Because the human, they're stuck in the human identity, which is the mind guiding their path. And what does the mind do? It externalizes your viewpoint of reality. It makes you believe that you lack and what you need is something outside of you, which is not. That's manipulation. That's not what's going on. You need to connect into more of you. It's not about bringing stuff outside of you. It's facilitating more of you. That's what ascension is. And that path ascension is the same path to either maintaining wellness or vitality or recapturing it. Okay. So this has been a really interesting clearing, which we've done with a few clients so far, but it's pretty brand new. So some really important stuff coming through at Truly Holistic. And as I say, we're always evolving, because that's what life's about. That's why we're here. That's what Ascension's about, is to ever evolve. And how things change out here is based on us changing ourselves and how we perceive things, how we look at things. For example, our eyes only show us 0.0035% of itself. So we can't just say, okay, this is how I see it and that's how I'm ever going to see it, because we're going to just remain only connected to knowing 0.0035% of it. We need to change the way we see things, the way we look at things, the way we approach things, which then gives us more and more of that thing, right? The bigger picture of what's going on, more understanding and knowing of what's going on, because that's the key. As I say, we need to be in our heart to connect to the heart of the matter, right, to the experience, to gain the lesson out of the experience, so we convert that experience into wisdom, and that wisdom allows us to see the bigger picture of what's going on. Okay, then all of a sudden it becomes easier. Trust me, it does. Anyway, I hope you really enjoyed this new update video and what I've been able to bring some new light perhaps to you. If you're interested in booking a session or a bundle of session, we've got all sorts of different session types that you can book, and plus bundles. We can book 3 sessions all in a bundle, or 6 sessions a bundle, which come with a discount. Go to my appointment page at trulyholistic.net/appointments/. If you'd like to look into becoming a healer yourself, which is to learn what I've learned over the years about what I know about reality and my reality coaching expertise, but also how to heal, how to align your neck and back, how to provide any sustenance that you know in the physical world, but doing it energetically. We've got self-empowered healing systems that you can purchase on my product store. Tensor technology, light technology. So go to my product store at trulyholistic.net/products/. Until next time, catch you later.